Hi, I'm Andre Dilantio, and this is my end of the term Gelitwo synthesis of the entire module. So the flow of this video take will address the my three takeaways from each of the modules: national and the global, colonial past and post-colonial present, and roots and routes. Three or like my takeaways in like synchronous and asynchronous classes and modules outside of these three, and then what are my takeaways that I learned that I can use for myself and for my future. And that's the flow. So first day off is national and the global past. So it talks about how narratives can be different in different of the it depends on the reader's social context. So in the story of Vision Out of the Corner of One's Eye by Luisa Valenzuela, it talks about pickpocketing, it but in the end it turns to a cliche or like an irony, because it wasn't him who was being pickpocketed, but it was him doing the pickpocket to another individual. So this can be interpreted as different social situations. It's like maybe you can interpret this as someone cramped packed in a train, or maybe someone cramped packed in a bus. It can be as well in like a church. It can be anywhere, so it can be interpreted as in many different places. So another example as well of this point is Bao, the Pixar film made in like I don't know 3 or 4 years ago. So it depicts a Chinese family living up in a different cultural place. So in contrast to like normal Asian family philosophies, they want you to stick together as a family. They always want you to group together. No one leaves. No one goes outside. It's very contradicting to the Western family philosophy. For like when you think about it, it's very common that when you're 18, the family tries to boot you out of the house already. They want you to work already. They want you to be self-sufficient, and it becomes it becomes a different type of perspective compared to the typical Asian family, and it depicts it very nicely in Bao. So for our second point is lost in translation work. So having to cater for a global audience is sometimes very hard, since the interpretation of the authors are the initial interpretation of the authors and their works have to go through a language barrier, or per se another individual for to translate their works, and it creates a problem of being able to understand works all in the same wavelength. So it becomes detrimental for the place of the translator to be able to convey the original message of the author to our global scale. So this form is much more common in books, poems, and such, and many more. But to be honest, I think a good story is able to transcend these language barriers and everything in between. Because being able to understand good story, it should be able you should be able to understand it. Should be able to be understood by everyone at the same. So my on to the third point is true narrative. It is coincided with also the last one. So this one is true narrative can transcend in language and cultural literary perspectives, while have making a literary work only for the local narratives. It helps give a bigger picture. So since local readers are able to read that book, they are able to understand the social contexts of the perspective of the characters as much of the viewers, creating a much more definite storytelling, and it can exceed the expectation of peoples and create a better understanding of the story. So an example of this is the short film 2 plus 2 equals 5. So it's a clear short film about uh, randomly they got introduced to the thinking of 2 plus 2 equals 5, but the students know that this is not right, but they still refuse to voice that out, and becomes a form of showing of rebellion. So as much the teacher and the other honor students is like depicted as morality. So even though this is wrong, they still teach it to the people, and the people just agrees to it. So, but at the same time, like at the very end, it shows like someone writing it 2 + 2 = 5, but he erases out 5, and it becomes 4. It becomes a concept of morality and justice towards the audience of the students. It shows them the original film as well. So I'd say another example of this is the recent film Oppenheimer. It talks about the life of Oppenheimer. So rather, I mean, it is something based down in reality, and everything is in history. But it depends. And creating a story, it still depends on how a author creates this how the author depicts the story. So being able Oppenheimer is like a clear example of a narrative that exceeds regardless of language and cultural backgrounds, and they are able to address the issue of globalization and create a well-rounded story that can be understood by everyone and its viewers. So on to the second segment. So colonial past and post-colonial present. So it has introduced for my first point. It has introduced me to the importance of narrative perspectives. So literary works are usually common by their social situations and contexts, and colonialism has been was a major thing that has influenced many countries and many states. So not poor. This a skit created by College Humor is a clear example of this. So because of their colonial past of being slaves, it creates a African American cultural stereotype in their perception of other individuals. I fucked it. Colonialism has influenced how individuals view colonized countries, and after their influence and the treatment of African American individuals growing up in or living in the U.S., it's a clear example how colonial past still influences the present. So on to the next part. Post-colonial countries in the present and their culture. So literature has always been a medium that it conveys their story. So colonialism also becomes a hindrance towards the creation of equal storytelling to be enjoyed by all. So my example for this is the works created by Jose Rizal. So Jose Rizal is a well-known Filipino author. He's known for Noli and El Filibusterismo. So both of these works are very abundant because of their depiction of the Philippine society back when the Spanish were claiming them. So it's not a biased perspective, but at the same time, when these books were published, the Spanish tried to hide these books because it is slandering their perspective of their view of the people of themselves. So it becomes a biased perspective on how people can enjoy these works, because even the people are trying to silence them. So it becomes it's not clear narrative enjoyment during the time of when this was released. On to the third point is social identities created by colonial past. Not only that the colonial past has created a influence towards their development, but at the same time, it creates a social stratification which can be influenced until now. So telephone conversation is one of them. So it talks about it's a poem that talks about an individual trying to rent an apartment, but as the hindrances of their physical appearances, it becomes hard for them to purchase a resident as these instances are very common because they resemble people of their colonial past. This creates stereotypes of these individuals, and from their mannerisms, physical appearances, and more, and creates hindrances towards their just because they want to do something else. So another example is you got to be taught carefully in the South Pacific 2001. So an identity of an individual is usually biased. In the case of this clip or film, rather than being seen unique amongst each other, they are to an extent influenced by their colonial past and leads to biased perception of the individual. In the common case here is African American people are commonly known for being slaves back in the time. So it becomes a influence on their social identity, and it still influences to them now. But this is being a normal case for African Americans, but it becomes also common for other stereotypes such as the Chinese, the Koreans, and many more. They have their own stereotypes create because of their social identity created by their past. So on to the third point, roots and routes. So reading this, I think that it gave me a better of understanding. Sorry, one sec. A better understanding on why journey stories are very compelling. So journey stories are usually are journeys. So they show a story of one man or a group of people trying to fight through or go over the hurdles that he has to go through to reach his end goal. So a common feeling that I'd say they got this is nostalgia. So rather than many of these journey stories, they like, I want to go back to my family, I want to be like reach this goal or something, but it's engraved in the feeling of nostalgia. So nostalgia can come in many forms. It creates how people can go on with their lives despite of the many setbacks. While nostalgia is a key factor in developing routes for people, journey stories are able to convey this naturally, which is a very nice medium per se, and the story of growth and development, which influences the character's philosophy and decision making. So, an example I'd say from this is the recent film last year, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So it's a it's a spin-off franchise from the original series Shrek. So it's comedic in nature, but at the same time it introduces new problems for Puss in his case. So in the story, he's being chased down by death, and it's captivating to see how Puss is able to address these issues that cannot be solved through their natural means, and thus creating character development in a better understanding of what it means for to live, or like to what it means to on his journey. So another example of this is disassociation, being in an unfamiliar place. So roots and routes are, as an example, if I'd like to call it, beginnings and the journey. So sometimes the goal is not attainable. Sometimes if it's an easy goal, it's not an easy goal. So a goal is something rewarded after you have worked hard for something, and it needs to be a very good reward for it to be a very good goal. While at the beginning and the end are very known two aspects of a story, we forget to address what's the important section of the story of how we get there to the end. So the entire middle part is usually people what forget, but at the same time, when you make a compelling story, people always remember the beginning and its ends always. So Krishna 3:29 a.m. by Meena Alexander is a example of this. It's a poem about an immigrant losing his hometown and his cities multiple times. So it becomes like they only reminiscence their time as a child or using the language or memorable at the time, because they always kept losing it. So there's nothing left to remember these places other than the memories that helped them and these memories or these roots help them. It influences them for their routes. So what they wanna create, what they wanna be, because nothing can of attachment can be attained. They have to switch homes and switch homes, languages, and many more. So they only lose their roots per se, but at the same time, it only creates these vivid memories of past lives that are once lost. So onward to number three, which is dreams and reality. So dreams and reality are both different spectrums. So sometimes dreams do become reality, and sometimes reality sets back and your dreams becomes gone. So reality is something that everyone must face, and people lose their dreams in the process. So Son of Zorn is a example of this. So Zorn visits his son after being away most of his life protecting his home. So this separation made Zorn and his son becomes apparent because Zorn wants his son to be the next protector of the island, but at the same time, due to him living in the different situation and different setback, it creates a disassociation between what the both what the both individuals want to see their lives go through. So I mean, the episode is comedic by nature, but it's a story about an outsider trying to live in a different place, and it becomes common to Zorn that as he tries to live the quote unquote normal life in America, it becomes it becomes hard how, because his roots has influenced his routes, it cannot connect because he has deviated from the path from a very long time now. So on to the next one. Follow Your Dreams by Jokoy. So as ironic as it says, it says follow your dreams, but is it your dreams or is it someone else's dreams? So it's a common Filipino trope to have like, oh, when my son or daughter grows up, I want them to be a nurse. I want them to be an engineer. They all think of this. They all want to think of. They want to go big and big and wise in the world, high income position, so they can be like flex to the other people that yeah, this is my son. It's a very common trope here in the Philippines, but it's also not as much common in other societies. But you don't hear it a lot, so it becomes a very common trope here. Why there are many routes to be chosen? A predetermined one is something I'd say not attain happiness, because why is your dream something that is influenced by outside people, but a dream is something what you want to chase for, right? So next part is my takeaways from class. So I learned that I have a better appreciation of literary works that are being put into making one. So elements of fiction, that module entirely. So literature has been my weaker points. I always fail to understand how underlying themes and stories wish to convey in a story. And at the same time, because I have a low attention span, I usually when I read, I can't read. So I just glance over it. I don't read it. I don't give much thought into that much. So usually I consume other forms of literature. So maybe like short stories, poems, or maybe someone that integrates the pictures into it, or movies. As But it has given me a better appreciation for these literary works. For another one is poem structures. So it might be as cliche it might sound. It always interested me how people are able to convey on these short poems a very clear story, and a very poems are, I mean, songs. Let's go into songwriting. So it becomes apparent to me that they make songs. So it's songs, but they have to fit everything that rhymes, something that also is connected with the, with musical sheets, and at the same time it also needs to have rhythms for them. It needs a song has like a many factors before it becomes a good medium, and before they become actual songs they need to be poems first. So it always gives me, a sense of happiness being able to understand these things, but at the same time having to read all the poems and songs give me a hard time, because maybe it's because of language difference, maybe it's because through the mediums, it's I have a hard time understanding. So on the last point, the contributions to the self. So firstly is context clues. Elements of both literature experience and fiction have given me a sense of understanding of the contexts. While literature always have to tell a story within its hidden meaning, so context clues become very important towards the understanding of good literature, and it's something that I can use in my day-to-day basis. So, I mean, in literature it's called context clues, but for me, I think I'd say for in reality, I can use observations. I can correlate these elements to people and their society and their surroundings. It helps me a little bit understand of, of these contexts. So another one is a clearer picture of the world, since even living in the Philippines, and I mean still going to college, but you are sometimes trapped in a bubble. It becomes hard to understand these, but whenever trapped in a bubble, you tend to not grow. You tend to not develop and have a better picture of understanding of the world. Literary works and has intrigued my curiosity, and it helped me view people not limited to the social backgrounds and their stories that they have. So these three modules give me a cleaner picture on why literature is commonly used as a form to say their stories, their circumstances, and many more, and such. That is my synthesis of all this. I'll put it in the comment section. I mean, no, in the description page of the flow of my video, at the same time the subpoints that I wanted to make. So that's about it. Bye bye.